The Christmas lights blurred as Sarah's lips found Patrick Sterling's right there by the punch bowl under the belt of a dozen coworkers. My beer slipped, cold foam spilling over my knuckles, a stain spreading on the carpet like a bruise. Patrick caught my eye, a slow, insolent smile playing on his lips, then pulled her closer, his hand firm on the small of her back. The air in the Sterling and Associates break room, usually smelling of stale coffee and microwave popcorn, was thick tonight with cheap perfume and the cloying sweetness of gingerbread. It was their annual corporate Christmas party, a forced festivity I tried to avoid every year. I stood by the wall, a domestic beer sweating in my hand, watching the familiar faces cycle through their small talk. Then I saw Sarah. She was laughing, her head thrown back a little, next to Patrick Sterling. His hand rested on her arm, a casual gesture that still pricked at something inside me. I had noticed how Patrick always lingered when he talked to her, how his gaze held a little too long. I dismissed it then. Now, as the room seemed to dim around them, I saw her lean in, not to whisper, but to kiss him. A slow, deliberate press of lips. His hand moved from her arm to the small of her back, pulling her tighter against his side. The Christmas music, some tinny rendition of Jingle Bells, felt like a mocking soundtrack. My grip tightened on the bottle. 10 years. 10 years since our wedding, the little church by the lake. Sarah in a dress her mother had made. 8 years since Lily was born, her tiny hand gripping my finger. Those memories, small and precious, flickered like dying embers against the sudden cold of what I was witnessing. Our life, our quiet routines, the way Sarah made breakfast on Saturdays, the way Lily would jump on my back, it all felt flimsy, a house of cards against this one brutal act. Brad, a guy from accounting who always wore loud ties, appeared beside me. "Everything all right, Johnny?" he asked, his voice a little too loud. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile, the muscles in my face stiff. "Just feeling a little under the weather, Brad. Too much eggnog, maybe." The lie felt thin, transparent. I could taste the metallic tang of rage, but a colder thought intervened. The last time I had let my temper get the better of me, it had ended with a court date, an assault charge that still showed up on background checks. Another one would mean losing my carpentry license, losing everything. Lily needed me. I nodded curtly to Brad, mumbling about needing some fresh air. The exit door clicked shut behind me, sealing off the laughter and the fake cheer. The December wind hit me hard, a raw slap to the face. It felt cleaner than the air inside. I walked to my pickup truck, the frost biting at my cheeks, the silence a stark contrast to the party's din. The drive home was a blur of motion. Every house was adorned with twinkling lights, garlands, wreaths, symbols of a joy I no longer felt. Each red and green glow seemed to mock me, a reminder of a season I usually cherished. The garage door rumbled open, swallowing the truck into its dark maw. Inside, the house was warm, quiet. Kelly, the teenage babysitter, was curled on the couch, scrolling on her phone. She looked up, startled. "Mr. Miller, you're home early." Her voice held a hint of surprise. "Everything all right?" "Just not feeling so great," I said, my voice flat. "Sarah will be home later." I paid her, watched her gather her things, a gangly silhouette framed in the doorway as she left. Lily was upstairs, sleeping soundly in her bed, her small world still safe and unbroken. I went into the living room, not bothering with the lights. The faint glow from the street lights filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows. Family photos lined the mantelpiece. Our wedding day, Lily's first birthday, a recent shot of us at the state fair. Their smiling faces felt like a betrayal in the silence. I sat on the couch, the cold from the party still clinging to me, and waited. 3 hours passed. The house settled into a deeper quiet. The furnace kicked on and off, the old house groaning. Just after midnight, I heard the faint crunch of tires on the driveway. The front door opened and closed. Sarah hummed a little tune as she came in, keys jingling. Her voice was light, a stark contrast to my own heavy silence. She walked into the living room, stopping short when she saw me in the dark. "Johnny, what are you doing sitting in the dark?" Her voice held a slight edge, a feigned surprise. She flipped on a lamp. The sudden light made me squint. Her lipstick was smudged, a faint smear on her chin. Her hair, usually neat, was mussed, stray strands escaping her bun. She smoothed it down, a nervous gesture. "Just thinking," I said. "You're late." "Oh, these parties run long," she said, waving a hand dismissively. She took off her coat, draped it over a chair. "I had to help Patrick with some files for that new project we're pitching next week. Got a real headache now, though." Patrick. She used his first name. A small detail, but it cut deeper than any confession. It spoke of a familiarity that went beyond the office. I said nothing. A strange calm began to settle over me, a cold quietness that was far more chilling than any anger. The old Johnny would have yelled, thrown things. This new Johnny felt a different kind of resolve. I stood up. "I'm going to bed," I told her. My voice was steady, devoid of emotion. I left her standing there, her coat still draped, the lamp casting a harsh light on her face. I lay in bed, the mattress sinking slightly as Sarah eventually slipped in beside me. Her breathing was even, a soft rise and fall in the darkness. I could feel the warmth radiating from her body, but I didn't sleep. My mind was sharp, clear, working through possibilities. What did this mean for Lily? For the house? For everything? The anger was a cold, hard knot in my gut, but it was overshadowed by a grim determination. I started to strategize. The glow from the fluorescent tubes in my workshop was a cold, steady light against the pre-dawn dark. It was barely 5, the house still sleeping, but I was already out here. The sharp scent of freshly cut pine mingled with the old, familiar smell of sawdust and linseed oil, grounding me. My hands moved almost instinctively over the rough lumber, planing a board smooth. Each stroke of the hand plane, each curl of wood that peeled away, brought a strange kind of focus. The rage from last night hadn't faded, but it had transmuted into something colder, sharper. A carpenter's mind, I thought, always looks for the blueprint. A soft tap at the doorframe. Lily stood there, her small face still smudged with sleep, her blonde hair tangled. She clutched a worn teddy bear. "Daddy, what are you doing?" she whispered, her voice husky. "Just working, sweet pea," I said, putting down the plane. Couldn't sleep. Her eyes, wee and curious, scanned the tools, the stacks of wood. "Can I help?" she asked, already stepping inside, the teddy bear nearly dragging on the floor. "Sure you can," I replied. I picked up a small block of pine, sanded smooth on one side, rough on the other. "Here, you can sand this. Make it soft like a kitten's ear." I handed her a fine grit sandpaper block. She took it eagerly, her brow furrowed in concentration as she mimicked my motions, a tiny cloud of sawdust already clinging to her pajama sleeve. Her innocent presence was a sharp, painful contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. This was what I was fighting for. The back door opened then, letting in a waft of coffee smell. Sarah stood there, a mug in her hand, her expression already pinched. "Johnny, really? It's not even 6 o'clock. And you've got Lily out here getting sawdust all over her pajamas." She looked pointedly at the small flecks on Lily's light blue fabric. "She just got up." "She wanted to help," I said, not looking up from where I was tightening a vise. "We're bonding." The word hung in the air, a quiet challenge. I could feel her gaze on me, searching, but I kept my focus on the wood. "Well, you both need to get cleaned up," Sarah continued, her voice tightening. "Don't forget brunch at my parents' today. We're expected by 11. Brunch, I'd completely forgotten. A Sunday ritual, dull and predictable, filled with her father's tedious political commentary and her mother's passive-aggressive remarks about my income. "Right," I said, a slow, deliberate cadence. "Look, I can't make it." Sarah frowned. "What do you mean you can't make it? They're expecting us. You know how Mom gets." "Emergency job came up," I stated, mirroring her own lie from last night. Word for word. "Big client. Needs it done today. Can't afford to lose the work." The words felt heavy in my mouth, laced with a bitterness she couldn't yet comprehend. Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. Suspicion? Recognition? She held my gaze for a moment, then looked away, sighing. "Fine, but you can explain it to them." She turned to Lily. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you showered." Lily looked up at me, a small question in her eyes, but she went with her mother, the sound of her small footsteps fading. As soon as they were gone, the workshop felt colder, emptier. I picked up my phone. First call was to Dale, an old high school buddy who now managed the local branch of the bank. "Dale, it's Johnny Miller. You got a minute?" "Johnny? Yeah, what's up? Don't usually hear from you on a Sunday morning." His voice was cheerful, easy. "Looking to expand the business," I said, my voice steady, professional. "Need to talk about financing. Got a lead on an old Victorian place down near the river. Needs work, but it's got potential for a workshop and maybe some rental units." I laid out the bare bones of a plan, vague enough to be plausible. "Thinking of putting in an offer this week." Dale whistled softly. "A Victorian, huh? Sounds like a product. You talking commercial loan or a mortgage on that? And is Sarah on board with all this?" I cleared my throat. "Still figuring out the specifics, Dale. And yeah, Sarah's aware of my plans to grow things. Just trying to surprise her with the details." A lie, but a necessary one. "Could you run some numbers for me? What would a loan like that look like, considering our current equity?" Dale promised to look into it and call me back tomorrow. Next, I dialed Mark Benson, the real estate agent who handled most of the older properties in town. He was a gruff man, but efficient. I explained I was interested in the Victorian, maybe more. He agreed to meet me first thing Monday morning to show me the property. The rest of the day crawled by. I stayed in the workshop, making a list, running scenarios, the physical work a distraction from the churning in my gut. That night, after Lily was tucked into bed, I heard the faint splashing of water from the bathroom. Sarah was giving Lily her bath, their usual nightly ritual. This was my chance. I went into the home office, a small room off the living room where Sarah kept her work files. She was usually meticulous, everything in its place. I scanned the shelves, the filing cabinet, searching for anything related to Sterling and Associates, to Patrick. It didn't take long. Tucked away in a current projects folder, I found a stack of invoices, all for Sterling and Associates, all with inflated figures, some clearly duplicated. There were also permits, seemingly approved, but with dates that didn't quite line up, and signatures that looked hastily forged, evidence of fraud. Patrick Sterling wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using her to help him steal. I pulled out my phone, the flash a silent pulse in the dim room, and started taking pictures. Each click of the camera was another nail driven into the coffin of my marriage and into something else entirely. Monday morning, the cold December air biting, I met Mark Benson in front of the old Victorian. It stood on the corner of Elm and Maple, a hulking 3-story ghost of a house, its paint peeling, porch sagging, windows staring out like vacant eyes. Mark kicked at a loose porch board. "Johnny, I gotta be honest with you. This place is a money pit. Structural issues, ancient wiring, plumbing probably still runs on lead pipes. You'd be better off bulldozing it and starting fresh." But I saw past the decay. I saw the solid oak beams, the high ceilings, the potential for light. The carriage house in the back, though crumbling, could be my workshop. The main house, with some serious elbow grease, could be divided into rental units. This wasn't just a building, it was an escape route, a foundation for a new life, a place where Lily and I could rebuild. "I can fix it," I told Mark, a quiet confidence in my voice. "It's got good bones." By the end of the week, with Dale's help expediting the loan, I owned it. The papers were signed, the keys were in my hand, all without a word to Sarah. It felt like planting a flag on a new, distant shore. The fallout when it came was exactly as I'd anticipated. I'd left the property deed on the kitchen counter, knowing she'd find it. She found it Friday evening, just as Lily was getting ready for bed. I heard her sharp intake of breath, then the rustle of paper. "Johnny!" Her voice, when she appeared in the living room doorway, was tight with fury, barely contained. "What is this? What have you done?" She held the deed out like a dirty rag. "It's a new property," I said calmly, not looking up from the newspaper. "For the business." "For the business." Her voice rose, cracking. "You bought that derelict old house without even talking to me? Without discussing it? What about our finances? What about the mortgage we already have? You're going to bankrupt us with your ego, Johnny. Your ridiculous ideas of grandeur." She paced, a frantic energy vibrating through her. "This is insane. I'm building a career at Sterling and Associates trying to secure our future, and you pull this reckless stunt." I folded the newspaper deliberately, setting it on the coffee table. My gaze met hers, steady and unblinking. "Building a career, Sarah, is that what you call it? Or is it spending late nights with Patrick Sterling, working on files and getting headaches?" The words hung in the air, cold and precise. Her face drained of color. The furious energy evaporated, replaced by a sudden chilling stillness. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked away, her eyes darting to the floor, then back to me. Fear and a flicker of something close to hatred in their depths. The pretense, the thin veneer of normalcy we'd maintained, cracked wide open. The chasm between us, once an unacknowledged gap, was now a gaping maw. "You don't know what you're talking about," she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. "Don't I?" I responded, my voice low. "I think I know exactly what I'm talking about." I stood up, walked past her, and went to check on Lily. The argument had exposed too much, but it was a necessary step. Later that night, after Sarah had retreated to her office, presumably to work on more files, I made another call. Kevin Foster. We played football together in high school. A tough kid who'd gone on to law school and then the state attorney general's office. White-collar crime. "Kevin, it's Johnny Miller. Long time." "Johnny, well, I'll be. Last I heard you were building houses, not making late-night calls to the AG's office. What's up?" His voice was wary, professional, even though we went way back. "Just a hypothetical, Kev," I began, choosing my words carefully. "Say a guy, a construction company owner, was, falsifying invoices, inflating costs on projects, maybe duplicating billing, using forged permits for some of his projects. Just a hypothetical, you understand." A pause on the other end. "Hypothetically," Kevin said, his voice now devoid of any lingering familiarity. "That sounds like pretty serious fraud, Johnny. What kind of company are we talking about?" "Hypothetically," I repeated, "it's a company called Riverside Construction. Small to mid-size. Does commercial and residential." "Riverside Construction," Kevin murmured. "We've had a few whispers about them before, actually. Nothing solid enough to go on, just some anonymous complaints about shoddy work, cost overruns, but nothing about outright fraud like you're describing." He paused. "If you hypothetically had some documentation, evidence of this kind of activity, don't take it to the local police, Johnny. Bring it straight to my office. We've got more resources for this kind of thing. And make sure whatever you get legally. Don't go breaking any laws to prove your point." "Understood," I said. "And Johnny," Kevin added, his voice dropping slightly, "be careful. Patrick Sterling, he's not someone to mess with lightly. He's got connections." "I'll be careful," I promised, though the word felt hollow. I hung up the phone, a cold resolve settling deep in my bones. Patrick Sterling, he wouldn't just be messed with, he would be destroyed, methodically, completely. The Victorian became my sanctuary, a place where raw wood and plaster dust replaced the suffocating silence of my home. I spent every waking hour I wasn't at a paying carpentry job here, tearing down crumbling lath, hauling out rotted floorboards, rebuilding from the ground up. Each swing of the hammer, each rip of the saw was a physical outlet for the frustration that simmered beneath the surface. My hands were rough, calloused, but the work felt honest, real, a stark contrast to the deceit festering elsewhere. Between plastering walls and rewiring circuits, I continued my quiet collection of evidence. Sarah's Henderson project at Sterling and Associates seemed to demand more and more of her time, often keeping her out until late. Each time she left, claiming another late night, another critical meeting, I'd slip into the home office. I found more invoices, more doctored permits, sometimes even crude sketches of project changes with no corresponding official documentation. I took photos, logged dates, meticulously cataloging every discrepancy I found, building my case one quiet snapshot at a time. The folder on my phone grew, a digital testament to the unraveling. Sarah's distance stretched into a palpable chasm. Her explanations for late nights grew thinner, less convincing. She'd arrive home, often after Lily was asleep, humming, her eyes a little too bright, a faint scent of something floral, not her usual perfume, clinging to her. We barely spoke, polite nods replacing conversation, the air between us thick with unspoken accusations and veiled contempt. Lily, with the sharp intuition of an 8-year-old, sensed the shift. "Daddy," she'd ask sometimes, her small hand in mine as we walked to the park, "why aren't you and Mommy laughing anymore? Are you mad at each other?" The questions were like tiny barbs, each one twisting a pang of guilt in my gut. Protecting her was paramount, yet the unraveling of her parents' world was a reality she couldn't escape. To fund the Victorians' renovation, I started selling some of Sarah's antique furniture. A cherrywood console table her grandmother had owned, a set of hand-painted porcelain vases she cherished, a large ornate mirror that had graced our entryway for years. I listed them online, contacted antique dealers. When she noticed the gaps, the missing pieces, she confronted me. "Where's the console table, Johnny, eh? And my vases?" Her voice was sharp, accusatory. "Sold them," I said without looking up from my sketch pad. "Need the funds for the Victorian, for business expansion. Things are tight." "Tight?" she sputtered. "You just bought a crumbling mansion, and you're selling my heirlooms? Those were family pieces, Johnny. How could you?" I looked at her then, my expression flat. "You wanted me to prioritize my career, Sarah. You wanted to secure our future. This is me doing it. The Victorian takes money, and our current financial strain, as you like to call it, is something we both contributed to, don't you think?" The implication hung heavy in the air, a cold reminder of her own choices, her own late nights. She flinched, her protests dying in her throat, a wave of impotent anger washing over her face. She knew deep down the quiet devastation I was capable of. The funds from the sales went directly into the Victorian. I sourced local, high-quality materials, old-growth lumber, solid brass fixtures, artisan-crafted tiles. I wanted this place to be built right, a stark, deliberate contrast to the shoddy, fraudulent work I was uncovering at Patrick's Riverside Construction. Every nail, every tile laid was a silent act of defiance. Dale, my friend at the bank, called me one afternoon. "Johnny, how's the Victorian coming along? And how are things at home? Sarah seems a bit stressed lately." His voice was gentle, concerned. "You're pouring everything into that place. Just hope you're taking care of yourself and your marriage." "The Victorian's coming along fine, Dale," I said a little too quickly, "and Sarah's just busy with work. A big project at Sterling and Associates. As for me, I'm just focusing on the future, building something solid." I deflected, not wanting to share the rot that was eating away at the foundations of my life. Dale sighed but didn't press further. I started noticing Sarah's reactions more closely. If Patrick's name came up in conversation, even innocuously, a flicker of anxiety would cross her face. Her shoulders would stiffen. Her answers would become terse, defensive. It was a subtle tell, but enough for me to know I was on the right track. The next step was a more active form of disruption. When I met with other local contractors, picking up supplies or discussing small jobs, I'd casually drop a comment. "Heard anything about Riverside Construction lately?" Just curious. Had a buddy mention some structural issues on one of their builds last year. Must be a fluke, right? Or, seems like their bids are getting pretty low. Wonder how they're pulling that off without cutting corners. Nothing concrete, nothing traceable back to me. Just a drip of unsubstantiated rumors. Seeds of doubt, planted carefully in fertile ground. Let the whispers start. The subtle rumors I'd planted started to bear fruit. I heard a few casual mentions, a slight shift in the contractor's lounge conversations. Nothing overt, but enough to know the seeds were taking root. Then a few weeks later, I heard through the grapevine that Riverside Construction had seen a slight dip in new project inquiries. A few potential clients hesitating. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was a start. Sarah's agitation grew more pronounced. Her phone rang more often, late into the evening, and her voice became clipped, hushed. One night I overheard her through the thin bedroom wall, talking to someone I knew was Patrick. "I don't know Patrick. He's just different. He's been spending all his time at that old house. What do you want me to do?" There was a frantic edge to her voice I hadn't heard before. It confirmed my suspicions. Patrick was pushing her, demanding answers about the whispers. I imagined his smooth, confident facade cracking. Just a little. The next morning, she confronted me, her eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. "Patrick asked me about you," she said, her voice tight. "He thinks you're spreading rumors about Riverside, about shoddy work." Me, I feigned surprise, a slow, deliberate blink. "Why would I do that? I'm busy with my own projects. Besides, I'm just a carpenter. What do I know about corporate rumors?" My denial was smooth, believable, delivered with an air of mild offense. "He said you were poking around," she insisted, her loyalty visibly strained. She was defending me, but the defensiveness was tinged with irritation, with fear. It created a palpable friction between her and Patrick, exactly what I wanted. She knew then that I was a problem. Her mask of composure began to slip more frequently, especially around Lily. She was shorter with her, less patient, snapping at small things. Lily would look at me with confused eyes, and the pang of guilt would hit me hard. This was not the mother I wanted for our daughter, but the consequences of Sarah's choices were slowly consuming. I made sure to stage a chance encounter with Frank Miller, one of the local building inspectors at the lumberyard. Frank was an honest man, by the book, and respected my work. We talked about wood quality, about new building codes. Then I leaned in conspiratorially. "Say, Frank, heard anything about Riverside construction lately? Heard a little whisper about some permits being rushed, or maybe even a few inconsistencies. Probably just talk, but you always wonder." Frank's eyebrows raised slightly. He paused, rubbing his chin. "Riverside, huh? Well, rumors are just that, Johnny, but I'll keep my ears open. You always build things right. I know that much." He didn't promise anything, but I knew I'd planted another seed. The right kind of man in the right kind of position. Sunday brunch with Sarah's parents became even more uncomfortable. Her mother, Carol, picked at her quiche, her eyes darting between Sarah and me. "Sarah, dear, you look so tired. Are you and Johnny doing all right? We're worried about you two." She sighed, then leaned forward, her voice dropping. "And honestly, that Patrick Sterling, he's always been a bit of a ladies' man, hasn't he? We just worry about the company you keep at work, darling." I looked up, feigning a standing, confused expression. "We're fine, Carol, just a lot of work pressure. And Patrick? He seems like a good guy, just a demanding boss. Sarah's very dedicated to her job." I played the role of the devoted, hurt husband, oblivious to the deeper currents, my feigned ignorance a shield against their probing questions. It allowed them to form their own conclusions, to direct their anxieties elsewhere. Meanwhile, the Victorian was transforming. I'd completed a significant portion of the exterior. New siding, a freshly painted trim, restored gingerbread details. The sagging porch was shored up, painted a deep forest green. It stood out now, a beacon of quality craftsmanship on a street of decaying homes, drawing curious glances and admiring comments from passersby. People started stopping to ask about it. It wasn't long before a reporter from the local newspaper, the County Chronicle, contacted me. They wanted to do a feature on the renaissance of historic homes in our area right now. The article, when it ran, was full of glowing praise for my commitment to honest, traditional craftsmanship, my dedication to quality over speed. It highlighted my philosophy of building things to last, creating a subtle but undeniable contrast to the whispers about riverside construction. The timing felt serendipitous. The next step was more direct. I wrote an anonymous letter detailing specific instances of alleged material substitutions at Riverside Construction. Cheaper lumber used instead of specified grades, thinner drywall, cuts made on insulation. I included a few of the photos I'd taken from Sarah's office, carefully anonymized. I mailed it to a local trade publication, one known for its investigative reporting on construction ethics. This was no longer just a whisper. This was a direct strike aimed at Patrick's bottom line. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The trade publication article hit hard. It didn't name sources, but the details about material substitutions were specific enough to cause a stir. Within days, I heard the news. Riverside Construction was facing a formal inquiry prompted by the article, and reinforced by the building inspector's sudden interest. The focus was specifically on material quality and adherence to specifications. The murmurs I'd started had become a roar. Patrick Sterling, I knew, wouldn't handle pressure well. He was a man accustomed to having things go his way. His anger, I surmised, would inevitably turn on Sarah. And it did. She came home late one evening, her face pale, her usual composure completely shattered. She smelled faintly of whiskey and desperation. She found me in the living room reading. "Patrick's furious," she said, her voice trembling. "He thinks you're behind this, Johnny. He accused me of negligence, of not keeping you in line. Said my personal life was affecting his business." She collapsed onto the armchair, her hands gripping the armrests, knuckles white. "What is he talking about?" I asked, lowering my book slowly. My voice was calm, almost detached, a stark contrast to her unraveling. "The inquiry about Riverside, all the questions about materials. He thinks you're trying to destroy my career. Is that what you want, Johnny? To watch everything I've worked for burn?" Her eyes, usually so guarded, now held a raw, exposed anger, mixed with terror. "Do you know something about Riverside? Something more than just rumors?" I looked at her, my expression unwavering. "Why would I know anything about Riverside? I told you, I'm just a carpenter. But if Patrick Sterling's business is so fragile that a few rumors can bring it down, maybe it wasn't as solid as you thought. Maybe you should look a little closer at his business practices, Sarah, at what you're really working on." I let the insinuation hang, a slow-burning fuse. Just then Lily appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the raised voices. Her small face was a mask of confusion and fear. "Mommy? Daddy?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. When she saw Sarah's distressed face and my cold, unmoving one, she simply retreated, a silent shadow disappearing back into her room. The sound of her door softly closing was a sharp pang, a moment of profound regret. This was the collateral damage, the innocent caught in the crossfire. The Victorian needed a new roof, a substantial, unbudgeted expense. I sold more of Sarah's belongings. This time I went for the more valuable items. A diamond pendant her mother had given her, a gold watch I'd bought her years ago, a pair of pearl earrings. These were not just objects, they were memories, symbols of a life she had curated. I watched them go, each transaction another nail in the coffin of our shared past. She discovered the missing jewelry a few days later. This time there was no pretense of a calm discussion. The fight was bitter, raw. "You sold my jewelry? My mother's pendant? You absolute bastard!" Her voice was a scream, fueled by despair and anger, the last shreds of her composure gone. "You're trying to ruin me. You think this is going to hurt Patrick? It's ruining me. And for what? For a house you're obsessing over?" "You need to understand the cost of things, Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady. "Some things are more expensive than you realize." "Cost?" she shrieked, tears streaming down her face. "You talk about cost? You think I don't know the cost? I know the cost. You're still young. You need a reliable man, Johnny. He made me feel alive. Something you haven't done in years." And there it was, the confession, raw and ugly. I'd known, of course, for weeks I'd held the knowledge close, a cold stone in my gut. But hearing it spoken aloud in the heat of her despair still stung, a fresh, sharp wound. Yet my resolve didn't waver. If anything, it solidified. "You're still young. You need a reliable man." The words echoed in my head, a perverse confirmation. "I'm moving into the Victorian," I told her, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "There are some emergency repairs that need my full attention. I'll take Lily with me for the next few days. It's not safe with the roof missing." Another lie, easily accepted, easily justified. I packed a bag, gathered Lily's things, and left. Sarah was left alone in our family home, surrounded by the ghosts of our past, grappling with the stark reality of her betrayal and its unfolding consequences. The call from Kevin Foster came a few weeks after I'd moved into the Victorian. "Johnny," he said, his voice clipped, inefficient, "just wanted to let you know, we've got enough. Thanks to some anonymous tips and the information you provided, we're moving forward. Patrick Sterling and Riverside Construction." Arrest warrants are being issued as we speak. The news was delivered without fanfare, but the weight of it settled heavily in the quiet of the Victorian's newly framed living room. It was done. The news hit the small town like a thunderclap. Patrick Sterling arrested for corporate fraud, material substitution, and permit falsification. The headline screamed, the local gossip spread like wildfire. Sterling and Associates, once a pillar of the community, was now a symbol of deceit. Sarah, inextricably linked to Patrick and his company, found her own world crumbling. Her career was in shambles, her reputation ruined by association. The scandal painted her not just as an unfaithful wife, but as a potential accomplice, a cog in Sterling's corrupt machine. The cold satisfaction I felt was real, a deep-seated vindication. Days after Patrick's arrest, I filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, the paper stated. I also initiated formal custody proceedings for Lily, making it clear I intended to be her primary caregiver. This was not just about separation. It was about ensuring her stability, her future, away from the wreckage Sarah had created. Sarah came to the Victorian, her face a mask of grief and fury, the faint scent of desperation clinging to her once more. Lily was at school. "You did this," she whispered, her voice raw, devoid of its usual sharpness. "You destroyed everything. My career, my life, everything." She looked around the meticulously restored living room, her eyes widening as the pieces clicked into place. "The emergency job for my parents' brunch, the Victorian, the money. You planned all of this, didn't you, from the very beginning?" Her voice rose, laced with a horrified realization. "You saw him with me, didn't you, at the party?" I met her gaze, unblinking. "You're a smart woman, Sarah. You connect the dots eventually." "You're cruel," she choked out, tears finally breaking free, tracing paths down her dust-smeared cheeks. "You're a cruel, vengeful man. How could you do this to me?" "Cruelty," I responded, my voice low, steady. "Is that what you call it? What about the cruelty of your own betrayal, Sarah? The silent, methodical way you chipped away at our life, at my trust, at what we built?" I gestured around the room. "This isn't revenge, Sarah. This is consequences. You're still young. You need a reliable man. Remember?" The words, her own words, hung in the air, a final, brutal echo. The consequences extended to Lily. She was quiet now, withdrawn. The school counselors called, concerned about her sudden change in behavior, her reluctance to engage with friends. The public shame, the whispers at the grocery store, the strained conversations when parents picked up their kids from school. Lily absorbed it all. She drew pictures of a family split down the middle, a jagged line separating her parents. Each one was a fresh cut, a reminder of the price of my methodical payback. Despite the personal turmoil, my business flourished. The County Chronicle ran a follow-up piece on the Victorian, praising its meticulous restoration and my unwavering commitment to quality. The article drew a clear, unspoken contrast to the recent scandal. New clients sought me out, drawn by my reputation for honest work, for building things that lasted. My order book filled. The trial was quick. I testified against Patrick Sterling, presenting the carefully collected evidence from Sarah's office. The photos of the falsified invoices, the doctored permits, the detailed logs of material discrepancies. My voice was calm, precise, factual. There was no emotion, no histrionics, just the cold, hard truth. Patrick Sterling was found guilty. He faced prison time and the complete financial ruin of Riverside Construction. He looked at me across the courtroom, his eyes filled with a simmering hatred. I met his gaze, my face devoid of expression. I felt a grim satisfaction, a sense of closure. The architect of my pain was laid low. His empire crumbled. But the victory felt hollow, tempered by the quiet pain etched on Lily's face. The cost was higher than I had anticipated, the scars deeper. The divorce papers were finalized a few months later. The legal proceedings were sterile, efficient, laying out the terms in cold, unambiguous language. I was granted primary custody of Lily, a fact that brought both relief and a heavy burden. Sarah's visitation rights were carefully outlined, limited to supervised visits for the time being. It was the best I could hope for, a way to shield Lily from further instability. Not long after Sarah left town, she packed her few remaining belongings, the pieces I hadn't sold, and moved somewhere far away, seeking a fresh start. Her once promising career, meticulously built and then just as meticulously dismantled, was completely derailed. There were no goodbyes, no lingering glances, just a quiet departure, a final severing of ties. The space she left behind was not empty, but cold, sterile. The Victorian, now fully restored, sold quickly. It was a beautiful house, a testament to honest work and quality materials. The profit was significant, more than enough to secure my financial future and provide the capital needed to officially launch my new construction business. It was a tangible reward for my efforts, a foundation for a new beginning. With the proceeds, I bought a smaller, cozy house on the outskirts of town. It was a modest ranch with a big backyard and an old oak tree, a place free from the heavy memories of betrayal that had permeated our old family home. I painted Lily's room her favorite shade of lavender, built her a treehouse, and filled the kitchen with the smell of home-cooked meals. This was our sanctuary, a place to rebuild. Lily slowly began to heal. The nightmares lessened, the quiet withdrawals became less frequent. She still had moments of sadness, questions about her mother, but she found comfort in my unwavering presence, the steady rhythm of our new life. We'd spend evenings reading together, her head tucked against my side, a small, fragile peace settling between us. Her laughter, once rare, began to echo through the new house. As the dust settled, the grim satisfaction I'd felt began to wane, replaced by a colder introspection. I often found myself in the quiet hours, after Lily was asleep, reflecting on the cost of my revenge, the destruction of my family, the pain etched onto Lily's innocent face, the cold, hollow void where love and companionship once were. Was the satisfaction of justice worth this emotional wasteland? There were moments, fleeting but sharp, where I doubted it. The vengeance had felt righteous, necessary, but the aftermath left me with a quiet ache, a loneliness that surprised me. I realized Lily wasn't the only one who needed to process the trauma. I started therapy, bringing Lily with me. It was hard, uncomfortable work, delving into the raw edges of anger and loss, of shattered trust. But it was a necessary step, a way to learn how to navigate this new landscape, to heal the wounds that festered beneath the surface. My new construction business, Miller Renovations, began to thrive. My reputation for integrity and craftsmanship spread, a stark contrast to the fallen riverside construction. People wanted honest work, and I provided it. I specialized in restorations, bringing old, forgotten homes back to life, pouring the same care and attention into them as I had the Victorian. Then came the offer. The bank that had held Riverside Construction's loans approached me. They had a portfolio of abandoned projects, half-finished houses, stalled commercial builds, all left in disarray after Patrick's arrest. They wanted me to take them over, to salvage what could be saved, to complete them with my standards. It was a bittersweet victory, walking through the husks of Patrick's ambition, seeing the shoddy shortcuts, the material substitutions I had exposed. It was a tangible sign of his downfall, but it was also a reminder of the path I had taken, the choices I had made. The work was demanding, but it offered a strange kind of redemption. Years passed. My business, Miller Renovations, grew steadily, becoming a respected name throughout the region. The reputation I'd built on integrity and quality craftsmanship held firm. Lily, now a bright, resilient young woman, navigated her adolescence with a quiet strength. The difficult past had left its marks, but she had found her footing, grounded in our stable home. Sarah occasionally sent letters, sometimes a hesitant phone call. The messages were filled with remorse, with updates on her attempts to rebuild a life elsewhere. I observed her struggles from a distance, recognizing that she, too, had paid a heavy price for her choices. The distance between us remained a necessary barrier. I found a quiet contentment in my work, in the rhythm of planning and building. Raising Lily, ensuring her well-being, became the unwavering center of my world. Sometimes I drive past the old Victorian, its new paint gleaming, children's laughter echoing from its porch. It was home to a new family now, a symbol of a different kind of transformation. I learned to forgive, not necessarily Sarah, but myself for the calculated choices I had made, for the path I had walked. The satisfaction of revenge had been fleeting, a bitter taste. True peace, I understood, came from rebuilding, not just destroying. I taught Lily the importance of integrity, of honesty, and the hard-won wisdom of forgiveness, drawing lessons from my own bitter experience. I found myself open to new connections, new possibilities, but with a deeper, more profound understanding of trust and its fragility. One crisp autumn morning, Lily and I stood at the edge of a new construction site, the foundation freshly poured. She pointed to a blueprint, asking about load-bearing walls. The sun rose, painting the horizon in hues of orange and gold. It was a fresh start, a quiet acceptance of the past, and a hopeful, if tempered, gaze toward the future. Years had passed since the dust settled. My business, Miller Renovations, had grown, becoming a respected name for quality work. Lily, a bright and resilient young woman now, navigated her world with quiet strength, a testament to her adaptability. Sarah still sent letters sometimes or called, her voice tinged with regret, but the distance between us remained. I observed her attempts to rebuild her own life, recognizing that she too carried the weight of past choices. I found a quiet contentment in my work, in the steady rhythm of construction, and most of all in raising Lily. Her well-being was the unwavering compass of my life. Sometimes I drove past the old Victorian, now home to a happy family, its lights warm against the evening sky. It stood as a silent monument to a different man, a symbol of my own transformation. I learned to forgive, not necessarily Sarah, but myself, for the choices I had made, for the path I had walked. The bitter taste of revenge had long faded, replaced by the understanding that true peace came from building, not just destroying. I taught Lily about integrity, about honesty, and about the quiet power of forgiveness, drawing lessons from my own hard-won experience. I found myself open to new connections, but with a deeper, more profound understanding of trust and its fragility. One crisp autumn morning, Lily and I stood at the edge of a new foundation, a fresh start etched into the earth. The sun rose, painting the horizon in hues of orange and gold. It was a quiet acceptance of the past and a hopeful, if tempered, gaze toward the future.